where
Oh.
I've just not nailed my timing with
like you.
anything. It is unlike me. And, well, yeah, Megan, you don't know, but my timing is usually terrible. And today's been especially terrible. But yeah, I'm so sorry. How are you doing?
But you know what? You're on time. You're just in the car, which is fine. We're gonna make it work.
Yeah.
Which is all right, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you guys, okay, well, first of all, it's the 7 Words podcast. Megan Holiday here with James McVey and Brad Simpson of the Vamps. So you guys are in England right now. Do you guys live close to each other?
We do, very close. We live probably about a mile apart, which is nice because for probably 90% of the Vamps, we lived about 3 hours apart. So yeah, the past sort of 6 months or so has been really nice. We've been able to, I can walk to Brad's house within half an hour, which is an amazing change.
It's hell. It's hell for me, Megan. It's hell. He turns up. He's always there. It's awful.
You can't keep any secrets from James.
No, I agree. It's been so lovely. It's nice. And I think London can sometimes be like, when first moving, this first time, James has lived in London a lot longer than me, but I've only lived in London for about a year and a half. And it can be quite a lonely place if you don't have like people around you. And I think it's really nice to just have all of us really close. I think it's made it really special.
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah, because I mean, if you're not living in the place where you kind of grew up or where your family's from, especially during this time, it's nice to have a really close friend around.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely.
So in England right now, like, are pubs open? Are things happening over there at the moment?
Yeah, they are. It's strange though. Bizarrely, I think 4th of July, for some reason, obviously it's a big one for you guys, but in the UK, some things, especially London, something like shifted from then, and we went from being, well, I mean, we're still very careful within the Vamps with coronavirus, but it seems like there was a bit of a weird thing in society in the UK where everyone went to the pub for the first time on sort of like the 4th of July weekend. And since then, I think people have been a little bit more willing to step outside the house and go to the pub and stuff. But I've not been to the pub in the evening yet, but like for lunch and stuff, it's really, really good. And there's a scheme in the UK at the moment where the government are encouraging people to go out and eat again. And you effectively get, from Monday to Wednesday, you get 50% off all of your meals. So like everybody's going out Monday to Wednesday and getting food, which is funny because then on the weekends it's quieter. It's like an opposite week at the moment. So I've been doing that a fair bit.
Yeah, it's the kind of similar here where, I mean, bars and stuff are not open, but you can go out and you can get, food and go to restaurants. And I mean, I haven't been doing it all that much, but tonight I'm going to go out with my family. We're going to go eat some Persian food, which is like my favorite thing ever.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
That sounds so good. It's so hard because it's obviously you've got to be safe, but it's striking that balance of like, I think things like going out to the bar or going to the pub are like so important for a lot of people's mental health, or like meeting your family in a social way. So it's like just doing that. It's nice that it's kind of started to be reintegrated, and I think it just really helps people in a safe way, obviously.
Yeah, I think we're all desperate to have a sense of normalcy at the moment, you can only take so much of this to where you just kind of like, I gotta get out of the house. Even just going for a drive,
And like I was thinking about this. I think a lot of the thing that gets people is people can deal with it, and I'm like this, and I know you probably are as well, James. Like when there's an end in sight, or there's like I'm only doing this up until that point. You set that point in your mind and you're like, I'm working to that point. Or it's like, okay, lockdown's going to be lifted here, bars are going to be opened here at this date. But I think it's the not knowing that's really, really hard, because it's like, even for live music for us, it's like not knowing when live music's going to come back is a really weird thing. Just the kind of unknown is really scary, and just it's you need those little glimpses of like, yeah, a bar, a night out with your friends, or whatever it is, to kind of show that there is a bit of a light at the end of the tunnel.
Yes, absolutely. I know, because at first it was like, okay, you're going to be working from home till September. And then that date got moved to January. And I just kind of feel like I don't know at the moment. And not having that end date is so weird. So I'm just trying to sort of apply a day at a time to the quarantine, like the same way like I do to like my recovery and my sobriety and stuff, is just trying to be present and be in the moment, you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, that's the key. That is the
So
key. Absolutely.
so I'm a big fan of Sam Fender, and his socially distant concert that he did like up in Newcastle, I think it was, that seemed to have gone pretty well. You know, that was, I felt like a little glimpse of hope.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw it. Number one, I'm a huge Sam Fender fan as well. I absolutely love Sam. He's just he's got such a great voice on him, and his lyrics as well are just, it's just a little detour off just to hype up Sam Fender, basically, because we love Sam.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was the first one that we saw that was like, oh, this looks like it's starting to, because they're coming up with an idea that could really work. It looked pretty fun. I think going like with 4 of your mates and standing on a platform watching an artist that you're like, I'd go and do that. Like, that seems like a good compromise at the moment.
For me, that's actually like a better case scenario. Like, I don't really like getting like pushed around and beer and probably urine thrown over me. So like,
Yeah.
I'm pretty down for that socially distanced crowd thing.
I don't know what gigs you're going to. Joe, this sounds pretty bad.
James is just going to punk rock shows all the time.
Yeah. No, it used to. I remember like the first festival I went to, and I think I went with someone older, and they were like, if it's cold and it gets thrown over you, it's fine. If it's warm, leave. Go back to the tent and change.
Good rule of thumb.
Yeah.
So this podcast is kind of about like how you got to where you are today. And obviously, you know, you guys are massive in the UK and in many countries around the world. The US seems to be slow to knowing about the Vamps. So I'm happy that I get to talk to you guys. And I'm sure that you've told this story so many times, but, you know, maybe just talk a little bit about how you guys all met. I know it was kind of like discovering on YouTube and connecting online. So just how you sort of formed together.
Yeah. Well, yeah, Brad and I were the first two members to kind of set up the band, and we met in 2011. So not far off 10-year anniversary, actually, which is slightly bizarre. And I've just realised, actually, my new wedding date is very close to our 10-year anniversary, Brad. So there might be some contention with you and Kirsty on the day. Anyway, we met, via sort of YouTube, as you said. There was Brad and I were both separately doing gigs in pubs all around like where we both lived. And it's funny looking back now, because you'd never get away with it nowadays, because we were like 14, 15. And, you know, now you can't do that unless you're 18, and they're quite strict on it. So it's quite funny in hindsight. And yeah, we did that separately. We lived about 3 hours apart, didn't know each other. Brad's 2 years younger than me. So sort of very different times in our lives. But I kind of wanted to start a band, and I grew up in a small town where I kind of knew everyone that was on the music scene, and I sort of needed to look further afield. And it was at that time when there were so many people doing YouTube like covers. There was a couple of big American cover bands on YouTube that was really cool. So I was on there anyway, and I just typed in whatever song, then cover, and spend like hours and hours just looking at different people performing, and I'd sort of say, oh, they're cool, but not quite right, whatever. And it took me a long time. And then I saw a video of Brad doing, I think it was like an Ed Sheeran cover, but what got me really interested is he also put up like 3 or 4 of his original songs as well. And I think, you know, some of those songs he put up there when he was like 14. And I thought it's really cool that like a 14-year-old is writing songs that are different from like, I guess the cliche like pop music that was around. It was kind of more I don't know, like guitar riff and like just interesting, different music. So I reached out to Brad and asked if he wanted to write some songs. And as I said before, it was slightly strange, you know, coming from very different sort of like towns. Brad was 3 hours away in Birmingham. I grew up on the South Coast, and yeah, different years at school. And it started with me getting a train to Birmingham, meeting Brad kind of just at the station and being like, let's try and write some songs, which slightly strange thinking back, but it just worked. And then from there, we kind of met the other two band members in similar ways. Tristan, the drummer, was in the final for a young drummer competition across the UK. And in typical sort of like drummer Tristan fashion, he just like added me as a friend on Facebook, and we didn't have any mutual friends. I think we had one mutual friend, and I'd never heard of Tristan. And it was like within 2 weeks he was in the Vamps, just because he has that energy about him that's very sort of like positive, and like he was like, no, I'm going to be in this band, and we were like, amazing. We got a record deal.
Tris had already decided that he was in the band before he'd added James. He's like, of course I'm in the band. It's fine.
He's such a character.
Yeah, he absolutely is, and I think that's amazing. And then we got a record deal as the three of us. We were writing songs sort of every weekend. So on Fridays we'd get a train to one of our houses, write songs over Saturday, Sunday daytime, go back Sunday night, go to school on Monday again. And we did that for a few months, and then we got the record deal, and we really wanted to kind of take the Vamps on the road and do the live stuff, because we'd kind of, you know, as I said before, we'd all played in various pubs and a couple of like school bands, but we knew that we needed to have like a bass player to take it live. And we saw a video of Connor covering, I think he did like Blink 182, but also a band that we knew in the UK, just playing bass. And we were like, and he was singing as well. And we were like, this guy's perfect. So we added him, from seeing him on YouTube. And before we knew it, we kind of had a band together, we're on the road. And that was, like probably 9 years ago nearly now. And it's kind of been a whirlwind since then, to be fair.
Yeah. And it's a very modern come together of a band, you know, because back in the 90s, you know, you would hear about how guys would, you know, walk up to like a post on the street and it would be like looking for a bassist, or, you know, they look in like trade magazines and stuff like that, you know. And so we're so lucky. We live in this strange reality, just the fact that I can, you know, be talking to you guys and you're in the UK, and so, you know, for your band to come together like that is really cool. And it actually is, I think, really organic, you know?
Yeah, it was. And you know what it is as well? I think you'll sometimes, like I was in bands growing up before I met Jay. Growing up, I was literally 12 years old. I was a very, a wee lad. But like I was in bands growing up, and like James has said, you work with, they were all really cool guys that I was in bands with, but you're limited on your selection sometimes, like, and you kind of work with the people who are around you who are really cool, but sometimes having the, like James said, having the opportunity to like look at people and think, I can actually tailor it's like online dating. You're like, actually, like, I want to see what songs you're going to cover that align with things that I like. And then that's perfect. You cut out a lot of like trying to work out what your common ground is. You figure, like musically, you figure that out before you've even sent the first message, which is quite nice. And I'd never.
Oh,
we've
lost him.
Wrote songs. So it was the first time that I'd ever. Oh, am I back?
Yeah, you're back now.
I'm back. Sorry, I'm going to be home in literally like 10 minutes. I'm so sorry about this, but
no worries.
If you could deal with it.
We can deal with it. 2020.
2020. Yeah. I'd never written a song with anyone before till I met James. So it was like, it's a very cool experience for me because I'd always come from my own, like I never had any sounding boards, and I'd never had like an alternative perspective on stuff, especially from a pop. Like I was a big indie fan growing up. I used to listen to a lot. Like I started on AC/DC, and then I moved to like Block Party, The Cribs, Arctic Monkeys, like all of those, which are adhere to a different set of songwriting sensibilities to what pop does. So, but I think as you move through songwriting, you just start and pick up loads of different tools from different genres and styles. So that was why it was really cool meeting James, because we came from very different songwriting backgrounds and landed on something that felt really, really like just right to us, which was sick.
Yeah, well, I think that you can really hear it in your music, the different influences, and especially I think on your latest single, "Married in Vegas." I think that one is such a good marriage of kind of like a fun indie rock song with pop sensibilities in it, you know, and it's like a perfect fit, I think, for current alternative right now.
Thank you. Well, I guess with that song and the album in general, actually, like, as Brad said then, the music that he was influenced by at the beginning were bands that would have guitarists in their songs. And I think that we had like a bit of a moment before doing this album, sort of last spring, nearly a year ago, actually, where we thought, what is the Vamps and what do we want to be? And you know, we did a couple of albums where, you know, they were slightly sort of like synth based, or like we did some collaborations with DJs, and we were like, that was amazing, but what is the Vamps? And it is 4 guys playing instruments, you know, guitar, bass, drums, vocals. And I think Married in Vegas encapsulates that kind of feeling, that notion of underneath everything, we are a band that plays songs, and the guitar sort of is the guitar, the drums and the bass and the vocal are what makes that song special for us. And that's kind of the mantra that we wanted to like adopt across the whole album. And it's nice to kind of come back to that sort of 8 years later.
Married, it's an interesting one as well, because like I think in Married the guitar riff is equally as important as the melodies.
Yeah.
And I'd never written anything where the guitar riff was like, I mean, the first line of the chorus is just like it's not like the hardest thing in the world to write, but I think when you put that on top of the down da da down and like that, those 2 different rhythms was something that we'd never done before, and I think it was like super fun to do, because you're kind of using the guitar riff as like as its own chorus, like just layering that, and we kind of like did that. I'm a big Royal Blood fan, so it's like so it's like the idea of like throwing octaves on the guitar as well when you hit the chorus to make it go, oh shit, there's like this whole other dimension to what you thought was just this guitar riff. It opens up to be like the full chorus. So it was cool. I think the whole new album's been a different process of songwriting for us that we've never done before.
I'm really excited to hear it. And even when you guys strip back the song and play it more acoustic, like Brad, even when you performed it just on piano, you know, and when you guys posted, you know, the stripped back version, I mean, it's fantastic. It's such a, I don't know, I'm just going to stick with like that kind of like indie pop vibe. And I just feel like it's appealing to a large group of people, you know?
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you. You've been the absolute best. It's been lovely to meet you, Megan. It's so cool because this song has kind of brought us all together. So it's been, thank you for the kind words. It's been really, really nice.
Yeah. Well, you guys are just so sweet, and you're just like the types of people that oddly I feel like I've known for a while. I don't know why, you know, and it's really nice to make those connections, you know?
Thank you.
So if we think back to the first show that you guys ever played together, what memories do you have of that? And did it go well?
Oh, God. I mean, so this is a bit of a trick question, the first Vamp show, because there are 2 answers. And actually, the first time, I'm not even sure Connor was in the band, Brad. I think it was just the 3 of us.
It was.
So we used to live in a hotel, which sounds very wankery, but like we did. And we got to know a lot of the staff, as you can imagine. You know, because we were there for a lot of time. Basically, our manager lives in a hotel, and we sort of like, we'd stay there for the weekends before going back home to school. And they had a Christmas party one year, and somehow we ended up performing at the Christmas party, and that was the first Vamps gig that we'd ever done, and it was like 2 acoustic guitars with no PA. I think like 1 mic for Brad, and I think Tristan we have like a cajon, so it's like a wooden box.
Yeah.
That was the first Vamp show, and I remember us thinking it was a big deal for us. We were like, I think we had like a little huddle in like one of our rooms, and we were really so excited, weren't we?
It was massive. It was. It still to this day. It was a big gig. That big gig. I think, and the worst thing was we barely knew any songs either. So I think
we played Teenage Kicks, I think, and that was probably about it.
I've got a feeling that there was a Christmas song in there as well, because it was their Christmas party. To be fair, like throwing a Christmas song in there as well, you'd be like, they've nailed it here. Like, I think we did a pretty good job of it.
Yeah.
I wonder if there's any footage of that floating around anywhere.
You know what? I've never looked. So yeah, we did that one, but I guess the first like proper Vamp show was we supported a band in the UK called McVey, which are they're really cool actually, like similar to us, I guess, sort of like guitar music. And we played in a place called Swindon, and it was in a leisure centre, and there was about 2,000 people there, but that was like the biggest show that any of us had ever played before. And it was a real moment where I think it was a click moment where we were like, shit, this is like a real thing. And it was terrifying. But again, you know, I think we played Teenage Kicks on that one, the cover as well. And once we played that song, we're like in it. So it was but yeah, amazing night. That was like 7 years ago, I think.
So you guys got signed, you became a band in 2011-ish, right? And then you got signed in 2012. Did things just completely escalate and take off from that point?
From 2012, when we got signed?
Yeah.
It was a weird one for us, because we started to get a bit of traction from the YouTube covers. So I think that was like the big thing that influenced the labels and like kind of got our foot in the door. So I think we kind of experienced a bit of like response to us as a band before even putting out our music. But I think there was a really big difference between covering artists and getting a bit of recognition for that and then putting your own songs out. Like, it's such a completely different beast. And we released our first song in, was it probably like August, was it 2012?
It was around then, yeah, August, September, or
yeah. And then we were just like, I don't know whether it was right place, right time, but it seemed to really work out for us in the UK, and we just went on this kind of whirlwind thing that we've kind of we feel like we've been on until really like about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, when we had like 4 or 5 years of back-to-back touring and like albums. And then it took us like that long and then a bit of period of time to stop, to really go, oh shit, that was nuts, especially at the beginning, doing all of those radio tours, like you say, going from doing YouTube covers to getting signed to then releasing an album. It just you don't process it whilst you're in it. It's so hard to process, because I think you just kind of tread in water for a lot of the time to enjoy it, to make sure that you're like in it, and like you were saying earlier, be present. I think when you're young especially, you're like, I just want to take all of this in. And then you've just got a lot on your plate. So it took us, I think, a bit of growing up and a bit of time to really appreciate just how mad it was at the beginning, and then just how much we genuinely love what we do as well. Like, I think that's been the biggest thing going into this album, is those experiences that we had on the first album, and then throughout the rest of the albums that we've done, have really shaped where we are as people. And I think in a positive way, in a really, really positive way. And I think it's like, we've come back and we're like, we just want to keep doing this and keep kind of reliving those feelings that you get when you release music for the first time. And it is like releasing Married in Vegas again. You get that same like adrenaline rush and like excitement that you can only get through putting out something that you love or that you're really proud of. And it's like stepping out on a ledge, because you put so much of yourself into it. then putting it out into the world is quite a weird, vulnerable thing. But once you've done it once, nothing else really matches it after that. Do you know what I mean? So you've got to try and continuously top that, which is what I've been trying to do, I guess.
Well, being so young and, having your life, just being on tour, making albums, being so busy all the time, did you guys ever feel like you missed out on important things in life, or did you struggle with, depression or any of that kinds, or anxiety or any of that kinds of stuff?
I think it was strange with the Vamps because so Brad and I started the band in sort of the last 2 years of conventional school. So, you have the option to go off to do college, or you can stay on and do what we call A-levels. And A-levels are what gets you into university. So, we started the band, the penultimate year of leaving school. And luckily, it sort of aligned up where it was at the end of Brad's first year of these A-levels, and I finished school just in sort of the right time. But with that meant that literally all of our friends, bar a couple, went off to go to university or like college, and were starting a new chapter in their lives. We started a new chapter as well. But I did have like a weird feeling where I'd go home on like a weekend after doing something, and all my mates just wouldn't be there. They'd be off doing something, and you'd go on like Facebook and you'd see that, they were like living their lives. And I think there was a long time where I felt, oh, what are we missing out on? I don't really see my mates anymore. Like, am I getting lost in this bizarre world? But in hindsight now, you actually see that what we were doing was living in the real world where, we had, so for example, when I was the oldest at the time at 18. I think Brad was 16, Connor was 15 or just turned 16. Tristan was like, I think 17, 18. We went to America for the first time in our lives for 4 weeks on our own. And it's like, if we don't learn life lessons doing that, then I don't know what else we will. So in many ways, we were doing stuff that a lot of the people back home didn't do. And we were learning how to genuinely be self-sufficient. We were on our own in New York City for like 2 weeks in an apartment. And it was minus 12 degrees outside, and we had to like navigate around, getting to these sessions, cooking for ourselves. And we'd never done that. I'd never been away from home before, like at all.
I think it's so mad when you think about that. When we like that trip, especially, was because there's a security when you're like in a hotel, but we weren't in a hotel. We were in just like this random, like it was like a weird apartment complex.
Yeah.
And it was just carnage. It was ridiculous. I don't know who let us do it. I think about it now. It's like, I would not let us do that if I was at all. I don't know.
And then like we went to LA like for the second 2 weeks where like obviously there are things available that perhaps we wouldn't be able to do back in the UK. And it was like it's like fucking Alice in Wonderland for us. Like and I think, they were genuinely the best times, and we were just skating around everywhere, like by the pool, and then doing some like sessions, but just hanging out with a variety of different people. And that was the fun time. But you asked sort of like with the moments where it went a bit weird. And I think because we went from literally doing very normal sort of 15, 16, 17-year-old kid thing in the UK, like small towns, to then being sent to America and doing loads of stuff, and then going on tour for like 2 years, I think we very quickly got onto like a treadmill, like a conveyor belt that was just constantly doing things. And all of a sudden we were doing the Ellen show. And I was like, what the fuck's the Ellen show? Oh shit, it's massive. That's amazing. But then like the next day, be like, right, you're going to Mexico now. Oh, you're going back to France. Oh, then you get 2 days at home with your parents, and you get home and it's like, you're on a quiz show. It's like every minute, what was that like? What was that like? And before you know it, like, I'm just not going to say anything because there's too much to say. And I think you don't really process how you feel. You get to a point where every day is crazy, but because your life is crazy and like everything's like amazing like that becomes that. So crazy is the norm. So then when you have those quieter times or those occasional setbacks, they're like fucking crashes because you're used to that. And, especially when we were in our very early 20s, I think there was a bit of a realization moment for us where we were like, wow, this is weird. We don't really have a control or grasp on our lives. Let's take a little bit of time to figure out how we feel about this. And that's kind of what we did before coming back for this album. We had like a few months to collect our thoughts, like figure out what we wanted to do. As I said before, take it back to the crux of what the Vamps is or was in the early days. And that's why now I feel like we're stronger than ever, because, you know, 8 years on the road or 8 years of doing craziness is inevitably going to like lead to a burnout unless you have that moment of like contemplation. And I'm so glad that we did that, because now, you know, we're really strong and united again to do it.
You definitely do get, yeah. Sorry, carry on, Megan.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, you mentioned at the beginning, like you do definitely get moments of like I know that all of us at certain points got real bouts of anxiety. And like I know that like there was conversations that like I'd have with James or have with Con, especially about that. And it's a funny thing because I think you have to you put so much armor on when you're young, because you, like James says, it becomes your normal for the beginning of it, and you're so fresh, you're like, this is amazing. But then you do have to put your armor on when you're going on stage or you're going into a radio interview, and you kind of you just have to develop this outer this outer facing thing that's like tougher than you. So I think as soon as you get, like James says, as soon as you get those times where you have to settle, it's just a weird thing to process, because it's being all right with being vulnerable. It's being okay with not having to be up all the time, and like coming to terms with that is quite a difficult thing to navigate about going. And you can only do that through time, I think, is like sitting with your feelings. And so it's quite anxiety inducing when you don't have time to sit with your feelings. And I think it's like, it happens, and then you come out the other side of it, and like you say, you get super anxious or you feel super nervous or whatever it is, and then your heart's going blah, 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 and then you're fine. And then you're like, oh, actually I'm all right, I'm fine. But that's time there that makes you go realize. And if it's that constant wave, you don't get out the other side initially to be able to re-enter it and know that process of feeling weird gets shorter and shorter and shorter until the two merge and you just are one thing, and you can deal with it as you would in your professional life, in your personal life. But yeah. I think that's what's so cool about this time round, is like, we're all a bit older, you realise that everyone's human beings going through similar stuff, whether you're in a band or whether you host radio shows or whether you're working in an office or whatever it is. Everyone feels the same things, you know what I mean, in every walk of life. So I think there's a lot more empathy. There's still room for more, but there's a lot of empathy in the world, and a lot of people do have a lot of capacity for empathy, and it's knowing that and kind of giving people the benefit of the doubt and not feeling like you've got to be like have this armor up all the time is a really, it's a lesson that you need to kind of teach yourself.
Yeah, definitely. That's it's been a big thing for me too, because I struggle with anxiety really bad, you know, and people are always like, oh, I would never guess that, because I'm always like, I just like act like everything's fine, but on the inside I'm just like dying, you know. But definitely figuring out ways of dealing with that, and specifically since we've been in the quarantine, it's been really bad. But you know, so I'm just like trying to find ways. Like I've been exercising more and just trying to like have a more balanced life. Trying to take it easy on caffeine, because I love that. You know what I mean? And I'll just self-induce it. You know, it's crazy. But yeah, I mean, I can only imagine for you guys, like now during quarantine and things being completely slowed down, do you know, like, how do you feel? Do you feel relieved? Do you feel good? Or do you sort of feel like, oh my gosh, I wish that we were out there, like doing what we do?
I mean, go on,
I was just
no, you go.
I was gonna say, I don't know about you, James. I've weirdly kind of enjoyed it, strangely. Not in like, I don't enjoy the fact that it's a pandemic, but I think having time to stop, I think, has been quite a nice thing for me. And I'm sure I've spoke to a lot of people, and they've been like, you get this 2-week period at the beginning of the lockdown where everyone was like, I don't know what to do. And then they settle. And it's like, oh, and I think a lot of people have like reassessed their priorities and like the things that make them really happy in their life. Because it's like, as soon as all your distractions are stripped away, as soon as like going and meeting someone every night of the week because you can get stripped away, you realize exactly who you want to meet and exactly where you want to go. And like, I think that's actually a really nice thing, because then it's important to balance your time. It's important to like put effort and time into things that you really, really want to, for your own fulfillment. So I think for me, it's been a nice little time to get priorities right, almost, for me anyway. But I mean, I really want to go and play a gig, but that's apart from that, it's been good. What about you, James?
Yeah, I think like, look, we're creatures of habits, you know, humans, and I don't know if you're like me, Megan, but like my anxiety revolves around control. So I, you know, struggle massively with, I guess, body dysmorphia, and I think that stems from not being in control of a lot of what we did in the early days of the Vamps. So I would control the food and my exercise, but that stems into every element of my life. So I like to be in control of what I'm doing day to day. And when things change last minute, I'm an absolute bellend. But I think like the coronavirus has forced me to change, because it's forced me to be looking at my calendar and thinking, right, absolutely everything from work to personal life is cancelled. And that was really, really hard for me to deal with for a long time, because, you know, as I said before, I was meant to be getting married the end of the year, and that's been a massive part of my life and Kirsty's life for the past few months. We've been planning all of that, and then all of a sudden it's like, right, okay, that's not happening now until next October. Things like with the Vamps, you know, we had like a schedule in place that's completely changed, like a whole sort of like world tour potential, just like off the cards for the foreseeable future. Things like not being able to see you know, family members and stuff, that's just gone. And for me, that was horrible. But Brad's right in saying that we all then had to take a step back and say, look, everybody's in the same boat. Let's evaluate what's important within our lives. And I think there's been a real like grounding sort of like quality to what's happened, and it's been extremely difficult for thousands and millions of people. But with that, there has been that recognition of what's really important in my life, and it has been the tangible things, you know, the contact with your family and your friends, and you've kind of cut like the bullshit side of your life. You've not had to like do something that you've not really wanted to do if you don't want to. And I think coming back out of this, maybe we are going to have a tighter grasp on what we want to achieve in our lives. And I think with the Vamps, that's been really important, because we've taken a lot of time to think, right, what do we want to do when we can get out there again? And it's kind of like, solidified, I guess, like the plan. And I think a lot of people have experienced that.
Yeah, I think that's, you know, exactly how so many people are feeling. And yeah, I know for me too, just reevaluating what's important in my life, and what do I want? Like, what do I want out of the future?
How's it been for you, Megan? Like, how's the whole lockdown been for you?
I mean, it's been fine in the sense that, like, I'm grateful to still be working. You know, there's millions of people who've lost jobs, and like, that's so horrible. And so for me, it's just been like, I feel like I've been busier with work than ever, which is just such a trip. I just feel like I'm always like on this couch doing an interview, and I do like 2 radio shows every day, and it's just, it's a lot. So by the end of the day, I'm kind of like, I don't have like the bandwidth sometimes to even get on the phone or talk to people, but sometimes I do, you know, and I really have been trying to connect with people. I've had like some people come over to the house and hang out, and you know, like gone to dinner and stuff like that. But for me, it's just been like staying connected to like my sober community. I have to like keep that at the top of my list, and like doing my 12-step meetings on Zoom, which has been weird, but you know, it's better than nothing. And you know, I'm just sort of been focusing on just like having more of a routine, because in the beginning I didn't really have like structure or routine, and now I've been like getting up and working out with my brother, and just like having like that really like kind of sets a good foundation for the day for me.
Yeah.
But you know, it's weird, and it's like, you know, it can definitely feel lonely, and you know, it's also like one of those things where I'm like, I want to hang out with people, but I also feel like I'm so boring or something. You know, I'm like, no one wants to just come here and like hang out with me. You know what I mean? Like, I have nothing to say.
Of course. No, silly. It is a strange. Sorry, I've just got off quickly. There we go. Sorry. I'm just doing 2 seconds. Oh God, this is hellish. It is a weird thing. It's a weird thing. I think I strangely think it's brought out the best in humans, weirdly. In like a very rubbish situation, it's kind of brought out all of the best qualities. And I think the whole idea of people checking up on people more so than they ever have done before, and like I was saying earlier, there being a bit more empathy in the world, and it's weirdly, it's like having this thing that's bigger than anyone. It's like it transcends race, sexuality, borders, like everything. It's bigger than everyone. It's everyone's combined problem, and it feels weirdly quite unifying. Do you know what I mean? And I think that is like really what humanity should be, is a unified thing. And maybe there's, if you were being super hippie about it, you'd be like, it should be a bit of a kind of waking up moment for people to realize it shouldn't take something like that for people to have that in their mind every day, of being conscious of how their loved ones are, or setting the right positive routines in their life and setting the right priorities. That should be how the world should be.
It's like I've lived in London for coming up 5 years now, Megan, and I didn't know. I knew 4 people on my street until coronavirus, and now there's a group chat of 80 people in like a WhatsApp. And it's like, Brad's right, like it shouldn't take that to be like that, but London's quite inward facing, I think, a lot. And it's just so bizarre that now, like, I walk the dog and like I will see someone that I know, and it's like, okay, now there's a community. Like, I feel like community is like a word. I don't know what it's like where you are, but like that's definitely been like a focal point. It's like, how can we help out each other in where we live? Let's make this area a community. And that's kind of what's happened in places like London that you just wouldn't have had like a year ago. So it's good in that sense, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with you, because you know, I walk Juno, my dog, every day, and I know more neighbors now than ever before, and people seem to be a lot more friendly and talkative than they were, because you know how Americans can be sometimes. Like, I would walk by and wave and like literally just nothing, you know. I'm just like,
I actually think Americans are like super friendly. I don't know whether it's because like we're British and like,
it's because you're British. You got the accent.
Okay.
You guys are talking, you know what I mean?
They're always really, really like the first to go out of their way. It's really nice.
I think also, now that I've dyed my hair blonde, I think that I'm more approachable now. I truly do. I've like gone, I swear to God, I've gone out places. I haven't been blonde in like years, and like I'm getting hit on, and people are saying hello to me. I'm like, oh, this is all I had to do, was just go blonde.
Just be blonde.
Guys,
maybe that's what I need to. Maybe that's what's going. I need to sort this out.
Yeah.
Well, and
I just don't think I'd suit it, but it looks lovely on you. That's good to hear. Blondes, apparently. Yeah, they're having more fun, apparently.
Yeah, so. Apparently so. But like, as far as that stuff goes, I mean, you guys, so you've played the O2 Arena, you've sold it out like 5 times, right? Something like that. You're the only band to have done that. That's a massive place. So you guys constantly have like screaming girls at you all the time. I would imagine going out sometimes can be a little crazy, because you can just never be anonymous. And then, James, I mean, I know you're getting married and stuff like that, but I would imagine that forming relationships when you're on the road and you're in a band is a difficult thing to do.
Yeah, it definitely has been. In the very early years of the Vamps, kind of when we were propelled onto that, like in that light, I think, yeah, we all found it strange. And, I a little bit sort of played into that. I dated like an actress that was really big at a time, and and all that shit. And it's like, that's fine if you can hack it, but I realized quite quickly that I'm not good at the showbiz side of it. And I think whether it's a girlfriend, boyfriend, family member, whatever, having someone to keep you grounded, like obviously the four of us are doing it together, so we're there for each other, but having someone at home that you know that you can trust and rely on has been, for me personally, extremely important. I met Kirsty just before we first went on our first ever headline tour, so like 6 years ago, and that really helped me throughout the whole thing, because I think it's quite easy, especially when you're flying around the world. If you're not careful, you can get lost quite quickly and not really have a compass, as it were, in your life. And for me, Kirsty definitely has been that. But I think, yeah, dealing with having like that amount of attention on you for, 16-year-old guy that perhaps wasn't used to that, it's a really strange thing to deal with. And I was speaking about this with someone else the other day who sort of like laughed, thought I was being sarcastic, saying, oh yeah, what a problem to have. But it's a strange thing where you think it's like the best thing ever when you've got girls waiting outside your hotel room. But actually, like, if you're not into that, which the four of us definitely weren't, it's actually kind of scary, and you don't know how to deal with it. You don't want to, if you don't want to go down that route, coming out and saying, oh, I really don't like that, you're just going to get, like crucified on social media for it. It's like, it's a very weird thing to deal with. Unless you're in that kind of environment, I don't think people will ever really understand it. But that was quite difficult for me, for sure.
What about you, Brad?
Yeah. It's a strange thing. I think, like James said, I think we all come from like, your relationship, it's got to be a thing that's like, when you strip everything away, it's got to be the thing that still maintains, whether you're in a band or not in a band, whether you're successful in your job or not successful in your job, your relationship should be strong. I always think you should be able to sit at home and do nothing and still be absolutely fine. And I think we've all got that sentiment at the bottom of us, and that kind of like, and I think a lot of that, we're very fortunate with our families and how we've been brought up, kind of that kind of bar of what we want out of a relationship. And I think when you can be, like James says, it can be quite a strange thing to have all of this stuff and then you go home and just reset to normal, and having someone who understands you as that, not as anything else. It's finding someone who loves you and knows you as that. And I think we've all been fortunate to have those people in our lives, and it's something that we don't speak openly about because it is something that we tend to keep. It's something like, for me as well, I personally really like preserving that side of my life as much as possible, because it then means that it's like my thing and the person that I'm with thing. And then, because there's a lot of people have a lot of access to a lot of or feel entitled to, or just want to, out of interest, have access to parts of people's lives. And that's the side of my life that's very much like, no, this is something that I don't want you guys to know about, because this is my thing. Have the music, have the tours, have my about to be blonde hair, but don't have like all those other things. So, but I think it's different for each person, but it's something that I think we're fortunate that we understand. It's being self-aware of the situation that you're in and not getting. I think as soon as people start to believe it, then it's a very dangerous place to be in, to believe that like all the attention is real, or do you know what I mean? Or starting to just believe it too much can be quite a dangerous place.
But it's not why we do it, is it? It's never been why we started the Vamps. We started the Vamps listening to bands like the Kooks. I don't know if you know them, but like that's yeah. And it's like, you look at them and they're just fucking sick musicians that have got like a vibe, and that's kind of what we always wanted to be. We never wanted to be these guys that were known for things other than the music. And going throughout the Vamps, it's always been about the music. We don't do the showbiz thing as much as we could have done. Some of us like being really private about our private lives, because to be fair, like, I guess the question is, when did it become the norm that someone had to know absolutely everything about a musician? It's like, we are musicians before celebrities, if you see what I mean. And I think like that level of intrusion is something that we've all had to deal with and sort of navigate forever. And like, you know, my sort of like feelings on it are like the polar opposite of Brad's, but they both work. I think you either go full out or nothing. And I think that middle ground of trying to manage the two, like scales, it never works. And I tried that in the start, but for me, like, I'm getting married, and it's like I want that to just be like 100% out there, so I know. Or I do the complete opposite. I think, yeah, when you try and figure out that middle ground, it's so hard. It's like a minefield, and I just think like maybe sometimes we need to recognize that that's not the excitement around like bands and musicians. Like, we should be thinking about the albums and stuff, as opposed to like who someone's dating, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I think it's finding that balance, like you're kind of saying, you know, because it's like if a band doesn't share enough information, I think people kind of lose interest. But at the side of it, you want to still have that like air of mystery too with certain things. But you know, I think you guys are doing great. I think you know what I mean. And it's all just like whatever you want to do, you know. And
yeah, I
I'm,
think
you know, I'm private in a lot of ways too. And then I'm really public and vocal about like being sober and, you know, having depression, anxiety and stuff like that, you know, so
yeah.
it just kind of depends. But really quick, James, so I saw that you were on a show called I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here.
Yeah.
I think this is somewhat similar to what we have here in America as Survivor. I think it might.
Oh yeah, but it is, yeah.
Yeah. So can you talk a little bit about what that experience was like for you?
It's ironic that we bring it up now after what we were just saying, because you think like I wouldn't want that level of intrusion in my life, like, but I think for me, like that whole show, people that watch it, I don't think will ever understand what it's like. But I did that. I came out of a place of, you know, quite a low place of being very uncertain with like my life and what I wanted to do. So I thought if there was ever going to be something that would challenge me, it would be go to Australia with people you don't know, have no communication with home, be starved to you know, near, well, fainting, and push yourself. So I did that for that reason. And it turns out I actually really got on with everyone in there. And I went for lunch with one of the other guys in there yesterday, and it's like, it was a really bizarre moment in my life that I don't really remember very well. It's almost like a dream that didn't really happen. But if anything, if I could take anything from it, it kind of focused me on what I wanted to do. So like as soon as I came out of there, I proposed to Kirsty within like a few weeks. And then, you know, within a couple of weeks after that, like we kind of all got back together as the band, and we were like, yeah, let's start the next album. And I think, you know, sometimes you have to take yourself out of your comfort zone for things to really make sense and kind of crystallize in your mind what you want to achieve. So for me, that was what that show achieved. I deliberately kind of stayed away from going down the showbiz route. You know, I turned down pretty much every one of the interviews and everything after, because I didn't want that side of life. I wanted, you know, it's fine if it benefits the Vamps, but really from my perspective, I did that for personal reasons as opposed to like independency from the band, which I think people were like thinking, oh, is that what's happening? But I was like, no, like absolutely not. I just need to figure out how I tick. And luckily for me, it unearthed quite a few sort of like demons that I realized I hadn't addressed with, you know, like the body image and issues with that too. So yeah, it was good. It was good for me, I think.
Yeah, I mean, that's a once in a lifetime thing to go through. And I think it's really amazing that you did it. Brad, was it weird to watch him at home, like on the show?
It was so weird, you know. I was rooting for him. And I mean, look, if a wasp came in here now, I would be out of here. So more of the point, I was like, fucking fair play, man. Like, well done. Because I would not be able. I was like, respect, because I could not do that. But yeah, it's very strange. But I think like you're rooting for your best friend in there, and I think we spoke about it before, and I knew that it was a personal thing for James that he wanted to do. And I think it was more than anything, he could have gone out first or he could have won it. But I think the most important thing was to see him go through a personal journey that when he came out the other end of it, he felt better or he discovered something that he didn't know. And I think that was, and he did that. And like he said, when he came out, I remember we kind of all got together a few months after, not with any, like, had been writing a bit, but not with anything specific in mind. And then we met up just as friends before being in a band. And I think we went for some food or something, and it was just nice. It was just really nice. There was less pressure on anything than we'd had before. And I think maybe part of that was because we'd had time, because James had fulfilled something that he'd wanted to do for a long time, or discovered something that he needed to. And it meant that when the four of us came back together as people, first and foremost, it was super easy. So that then that going from there to then create music after that it makes it so much easier. So it was nice. It was a good thing. You didn't get too many bad eating challenges either, so you lucked out, to be fair, dude.
Yeah, it was all right. It was all right.
Yeah, you guys just seem like you're all very supportive and like close. It just seems like you guys are kind of friends first, bandmates second. I mean, obviously like brothers at this point. I'm sure you fight, and I'm sure, but it's always love at the end of the day.
100%, yeah. And I don't think you can, like, we've been a band for, like James said, nearly 10 years, and I don't think you can do that without having a really strong friendship underneath everything, and then you make music on top of it.
I think
so we're lucky.
Some people do. I think there are so many.
Yeah, no, to be fair,
they don't have that. They don't have that love, You guys definitely. It's just from all the interviews I've watched, it's very like palpable that you guys just have good chemistry, and there's a lot of love there, So for someone out there who wants to be a musician and wants to do this, what would your advice be?
I mean, we always used to say in the early days, like, put stuff on YouTube. And I think to an extent that's maybe still a thing. But now if I could speak to like 17-year or 12-year-old James when sort of started playing guitar, it would just be to like really hone in on your craft. So when we started the Vamps, like Brad and I could play sort of a similar level of piano. And I decided, and like production actually on the laptop. And I thought, oh, well, I'm not too fussed about learning that. And Brad went the other way and learned piano and now can produce like half of the album, well, more than half. And it's like, I think if I could have said to myself, look, just knuckle down and really work on your talents back then, because it would make such a difference now. But I also think like sort of, I guess like take opportunities, and, sometimes when it's like 2 a.m. and you're knackered and you want to go to bed, like I was always that one that would go to bed, but you miss out on so many things. So just try and have an optimistic mindset with opportunities, and don't be afraid to sort of say yes to something if it pushes you outside of your comfort zone. That's what I'd probably say to people. Brad, what about you?
I agree. I think get your 10,000 hours in. I think there's a lot of, when you look at like, when I used to look at like my favorite guitarists or like musicians or people that I looked up to, they were talented. They were really, really talented, but your talent gets you so far, and then your hard work does the rest. And I think the thing that really differentiates people from going down a path where they pursue a passion and then it peters out, or they pursue a passion and they turn it into something, is the level of hard work that you put in. And it's hard because there's an element of luck and there's an element of opportunity, but I still think no matter what walk of life you come from, if you work hard enough, the universe will give something good back to you. And I think whether that's sitting, playing guitar till your fingers bleed, or learning production, or writing song after song after song, that hard work comes to fruition at some point. So I'd say get your 10,000 hours in on whatever your passion or talent or craft is, and then we did always used to say go on YouTube, but I think there's a whole thing of like adapt, or I know it sounds really savage, but it's like adapt or die. And I think it's take advantage of what's there and the platforms that are out there at the moment, and learn to work with them, but in your own way that doesn't feel like you're not being true to yourself. Like do it, but do it in the way that you do it, and you'll be sweet. And then just have fun. That's the biggest thing. Do it with a smile on your face, enjoy it.
Yeah.
Love it, and then
In the
it'll be
moment.
sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
that's
like,
what I'd say.
we did it for years, didn't we? Where we didn't like realize the milestones we were doing. I think write a diary or something. Like I found a diary that I wrote before we first ever did that gig I was saying on in Swindon, like from 7 years ago. And like reading that back, I was like, I wish I'd carried that on, because you can't relive those moments. And even though it's all on social media nowadays, it's not the same. Like,
but if you haven't got time to write a diary because you're having a good time, then that's like, you know what I mean? If you've packed your time for, then it's fine. But a diary is sick. It's a vibe.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's you know, there's so much that goes on. It's like we think we're gonna remember certain things or remember how we felt, and you know, to kind of have that ability to be like, wow, I've really grown a lot, or oh, this thing is still the same, or whatever, you know.
Yeah.
But
So
you guys are just so sweet, just such cool people. You know, like truly, none of the stuff that's happened to you has gone to your head whatsoever. You're so humble, and I just I'm so happy that I got connected with you guys. I can't wait to actually get to meet you in real life one day.
Gonna be awesome. We'll go for some Persian food. I don't think I've ever been for Persian food, but
we're doing it. We'll go to Rafi's place.
I'm down.
I'm glad that the podcast is back. I'm glad that you're back. You're doing it.
You guys helped me bring it out of quarantine retirement. And it's funny talking about 10,000 hours, because this podcast was supposed to be called 10,000 hours, but it was already so then we went with 7 Words Podcast. What does it mean? We may never know. Now, if you listen to the intro of the podcast, you'll know what it is.
Okay.
But yeah, James and Brad from the Vamps, thank you guys so much for hanging out and coming on the pod. And yeah, we'll speak soon.
Thank you.
Definitely. Thank you, Megan. Thanks for having us. We'll speak to you soon.
All right, sounds good.
Peace.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.